Well, the Trump campaign has dropped its lawsuit in Michigan to block the certification of votes. But the president is raising eyebrows after inviting some of the state's top lawmakers to the White House. Mr. Trump will host about a dozen Republican lawmakers from Michigan today, and that includes the state's Senate Majority Leader and House Speaker. In response to today's meeting, Republican Senator Mitt Romney of Utah tweeted in part, "The president has now resorted to overt pressure on state and local officials to subvert the will of the people and overturn the election. It is difficult to imagine a worse, more undemocratic action by a sitting president." CBS News projects President-elect Joe Biden won Michigan by nearly 160,000 votes. Meanwhile, Georgia's hand recount of ballots is complete, and Mr. Biden remains the clear winner, beating President Trump by more than 12,000 votes. Georgia's Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, also confirms that there was no evidence of voter fraud. CBS News campaign reporter LaCrai Mitchell has been covering the race in Georgia, and she is with us this morning to talk about what happens next. So thank you for joining us nice and early. This hand tally found no evidence of voter fraud, despite several claims by the president, without evidence, of course. Can you explain what went into the hand count and why they did it?
Sure thing, Emery. And so what happened is that the state of Georgia, according to state law, they have to conduct a risk limiting audit. And what that audit typically entails is that the Secretary of State will select a race. And in this case, he selected the presidential race because there was so much heightened attention around this contest. And after they select a race, they generally pick a sample size of ballots that they then go back and they hand count. And they match this up with a tally that they get from a machine to make sure that what they're getting on the machine is what they in fact got when they did a hand count. What happened this time around, because like I said, the presidential race is a race that we've all been paying so much attention to, Secretary Raffensperger chose the presidential election race and decided to hand count all of the votes that were cast in the 2020 general election for the presidential contest. So what took place over the past couple weeks here is that you had all 159 counties in the state of Georgia doing this hand audit, is what they were calling it, which was essentially a hand count of every vote that had been cast to make sure that the results that we saw on election night were, within a reasonable margin of error, the same results that they got from this hand count. And what was announced last night is that that was the case. That of the different ballots that were hand tallied and gone back over, that they firmly believe that we can now confirm that the results that we previously got showing that President-elect Joe Biden had won the state are in fact correct.
All right, so you think that would be the final word for all parties impacted by this, but no. The Trump campaign released a statement saying in part, "This so-called hand recount went exactly as we expected because Georgia simply recounted all of the illegal ballots that had been included in the total. We continue to demand that Georgia conduct an honest recount, which includes signature matching." All right, so they went on to say that they're going to keep pursuing legal action. What are they talking about with signature matching, and is there any legal recourse for the Trump campaign at this point?
So there is still steps that can be taken. After the state certifies its election results today, because the margin in which President-elect Joe Biden won is still within 0.5%, the Trump campaign can ask for a recount. And I'll say recount, and essentially it is, again, counting all the ballots again, except this time they'll be using machines to do so. These high-powered scanners that they will run all the votes back through to recount. So that can still happen after the state certifies election results, and that will be happening by today. And so the signature matching, though, what is important to remember, and what the Secretary of State's office has continued to tell us throughout the week, is that signature matching in Georgia takes place before a ballot is accepted. So these signatures were matched. Ballots are not counted until the signature is matched. But then after that point, the ballot is separated from the envelope. And so at this point, it would not be possible even to go back and rematch signatures because it's too far in the process.
That's good to know. And people are listening, and I just want to sort of point out that there's a difference between, a handful of errors that may happen on a ballot. Maybe somebody spells a county name wrong or something like that. There's a difference between that and widespread fraud. What we're seeing here is no widespread fraud. We're not saying there might not have been, a couple errors with ballots. That's normal. Millions of people are casting ballots. Widespread fraud, no evidence. So you said as early as today, Georgia could be certifying their ballot count. Could anything sort of get in the way of that before?
We're being told no. So we're being told that at this point, the counties have done their risk limiting audits, and what we've been being told all week by the Secretary of State's office is that they are confident that where they are in this process, that certification will take place today. As a matter of fact, I believe that, to take it a step further, that it has to be done by today so that they can then have enough time to send out their overseas and military ballots ahead of this Senate runoff that everyone is paying attention to as well. That's right around the corner, less than 2 months away.
Yes, let us talk about that. Georgia is gearing up for this Senate runoff race. It could determine the balance of power within the Senate. There are millions and millions of dollars being poured into this race, millions of dollars even before, and now even more. Where is all this money coming from? Who is it for?
So the last time I checked Kantar CMAG data, which was late last night, approximately $171 million has been slated in advertising for this Senate race in Georgia, which is a lot of money. And what we see in the Kantar CMAG data, at least at this point, is that Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler is slated to spend more than $40 million by the runoff. And Democrat contender John Ossoff is slated to spend nearly $38 million. You have the other Senate candidates as well, Democrat Reverend Raphael Warnock and Republican Senator David Perdue are also slated to spend tens of millions of dollars in this runoff. And then additionally, you have, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee that is slated to spend more than $5.6 million this year. The National Republican Senatorial Committee with at least $4 million. And of course, just last Friday, the Republican National Committee said that it would be investing not just $20 million or more than $20 million into this race, but up to 600 staffers. And so, as you can hear, even as I run off those dollar amounts, which might have been too fast to keep up, it's a lot of money that's going into this race, a lot of attention. You have different candidates, even Republican senators from other states, coming in to really rev up the excitement around this race, because what both political parties are going to have to do is they're going to have to maintain this energy within this less than 2 month period. And the hope is that they can see high turnout that they saw in a couple of these other races, which is something you've heard the Senate candidates say on the stump. Don't vote alone, bring a friend, come out, because that's going to be a make or break in either case.
Yeah, so true. I did catch that, though, LaCrai, when you were on the website late last night, which makes me even more appreciative that you are joining us this early in the morning. Thank you so much.
Happy to do so. Thanks so much for having me.